my startup failed. I was delayed for about 6 months with my return offer from Amazon. From then, I got this kind of golden opportunity with just self-studying, and I was determined to find a job. You can watch a course, a code along for a week and think, oh, I've mastered web development. You go and make a dummy project and you're unable to start. I went through all of those. I'm on the TikTok live recommendations team. It's
Amazing.
Only about 20 of us managing the recommender system for many, many users for the US. So AI engineers, they'd probably be software engineers working on an AI team. So they would be implementing UI and full stack features that serve AI models to the users.
A Codesmith alum, Victor Liu, who is a machine learning engineer at TikTok, and before that was a software engineer at Amazon. Went to Codesmith back in 2021, I think. So we're going to cover today how Victor went about this journey, why Victor took this journey, what motivated you to switch from software engineering into machine learning engineering, and how can you maybe make that same transition. So lovely to have you here, Victor. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me, Will. I have been looking forward to this for a while, and you know how much we all look up to you, so it's an honor.
Oh, we all look up to you, Victor, as well, without a doubt. So what's daily life like working at the culture-defining company of this era?
I think TikTok, because it's such a fast-growing company, I think it operates like a startup as well as like a big tech company in different ways. And I'm 5 days in person, and I work
So you're there every day?
I do. I'm in every day, which is...
Where? Tell us where.
San Jose in Bay Area.
Okay.
And I'm on the TikTok live recommendations team. So we work on the live stream product for the US, and it's
Amazing.
Only about 20 of us, and it's 20 of us managing the recommender system for many, many users for the US. So in that sense, I think the responsibility, the scope of responsibility is rather large, and that comes with its own share of really exciting things that you can work on, as well as, a lot of fires, as you mentioned, or a lot of things that you'd have to manage maybe around the clock as an engineer.
Break that feature, because for that to only be 20 people working on that, kind of wild, given how sizable that product is. So yeah, break it down a little bit for us.
Yeah, TikTok has the For You page, and a lot of that from our experiences as a user would be the short videos. But in addition to that, there's actually several other kind of formats of content that gets worked into the For You page. And one of those is the live stream. So, maybe as a TikTok user, you would sometimes come across this where you would have a live stream occasionally incorporated into your For You page that you can click into. And if you click into that, you'll be entering the live product. There's other ways to enter the live product. There's a button on the top left corner that also lets you watch the live streams. And from there, you have your own live For You page. And yeah, all of the recommenders around that is managed by us. And, it's been kind of a new product in the US. It's roughly around, I believe, 4 to 5 years old. I think that's what makes it so exciting. Is there's lots of new features implemented on a daily basis. So.
That's absolutely amazing. When comparing TikTok to an Instagram or big tech consumer-facing apps or products, you're dealing with kind of popularity, notoriety, and the fires that come with that. You're literally, as part of a single team, defining what people see in live streams. Is that a kind of reality, that there is this startup feel there that you might not get at like a Google at this point?
Exactly. I would say so. I worked at Amazon as a software engineer, and an entire team can work on a very specific feature within a feature, probably nested within several layers of another feature. And I think that probably there's pros and cons to that. I think kind of the large internet companies are able to afford to do that just because of the sheer scale that they operate at. But at the same time, as an engineer, if you're maybe more mature in your career, or you just want to work on more exciting things and have more of an impact, you might want to look towards these kind of large companies that are still operating as a startup and still just have a lot of initiatives in place to grow. So I think that's where TikTok comes in. I could imagine if we had kind of a parallel with if Amazon had to operate a product at this scale, and let's say it's this large of a scope, I don't think they would just put tens of people in place. They'd probably be an order of magnitude of hundreds of people to be in charge of a scope like this.
So tell us about a typical feature release cycle. Where do you sit within that as the machine learning engineer? Where do the software engineers sit? Where do the UI? Where's the QA? Where's the user testing? Like, how do all these pieces sit within your team?
That's a great question. And that can go into a little more about the responsibilities of an MLE,
Mm-hmm.
especially
sure.
in today's age where it's always changing. So, this can probably be outdated within the next month. But any ML job kind of sits on the spectrum of how close you are to the model development versus how close you are to deployment and kind of this platform engineer kind of role. So it kind of sits there. And I'd say like MLE is kind of in the middle. Research engineer is closer to research, and research scientist is solely working on model development and design.
Just for everybody, when we say model development, we mean using troves of data to make good predictions of future. Give us a kind of version of that as you would put it.
In a nutshell, machine learning is designing these models in a way where it's able to make accurate predictions and reflect large troves of data. And in that sense, there's a lot of iterations around the architecture of models as well as specific implementation of those models in a good way where it's able to effectively do its job and be deployed to the masses.
Makes good predictions, makes predictions that satisfy some goal. And that's where your, as you say, research scientist, data scientist might sit. And then the other end, as you describe the platform kind of end.
Yeah, platform engineers, I think, work a lot more with deploying the models, ensuring that the model serving is good. So when a user pings TikTok for more recommendations, ensuring that they're able to get it in a timely way that's robust. And it kind of mimics a lot of what backend engineers would do as a software engineer as well, right? And I think there's still a special aspect to it where things like model training and model serving, hosting these models, is also becoming its own kind of niche where there's special kind of machine learning methods applied to ML infrastructure. MLEs kind of sit in the middle where we are end to end. And so I guess on a typical day, a typical project lifecycle, we probably start with a problem. Either there's room to grow for these specific metrics. Maybe the literature around a specific module is just becoming more and more advanced, and we notice that and we're not as up to date as we want to be, right? That could be something else that we work on. So we identify the problem. We then do a literature review of sorts where we read through papers and understand the state of the art and understand. So not just copying what the state of the art is, but also kind of developing this kind of understanding of the most modern techniques and seeing how we can implement it into our own design. And that also requires an extra level of business need and business understanding that you need to incorporate as well.
This is why we talk about machine learning engineer being perhaps the most comprehensive set of things needed to be good at it. So you've got business insight, you've got research insight.
That's right. And I think you need to incorporate that into a design where you're also managing things like simplicity of the system, kind of like high probability of success for the experiments, because most experiments don't go well, right? So what's like a far-reaching, risky approach versus something that, you think would be more reliable, as well as kind of performance resource constraints. So the amount of GPUs that are available, how, understanding things like time complexity, space complexity.
So understanding the math, the research papers, the business need and principles, and then also the engineering, constraints and perspectives, what a computer can do and how fast it can do it, all within one role.
That's right. And from there, you probably would be able to iterate on a great design for a new feature. And and so that's
are there any other roles that have all three of those?
It is very special. I'd say that's what's interesting about these engineering roles that are becoming kind of a jack of all trades in a sense where, you'd be able to work on anything and be adaptable to the situation. But machine learning engineers right now probably have a strong business understanding and then have a good engineering understanding of how to connect a business problem to an engineering solution. And I think probably MLEs just take that step further by requiring this kind of strong academic understanding, this theoretical knowledge.
We've had an increasing number of people applying to the program who are data scientists at Pinterest, data scientists at Meta. And they're like, I want to be an MLE, so I want to understand how the computer does what it does and what it can do. And honestly, writing the code to do it efficiently in production. I know the term data scientist can be broadly used, but is not as central as you move towards that research end. So I guess I'd have to ask people going from the data scientist path or the very computer science side, going into Codesmith to do the program, what made you do Codesmith? What was your journey into it? Because you were actually in a whole different field before, I think.
That's right. And looking back, the journey into Codesmith was pretty incredible. And I think Codesmith is one of the things that helped me just completely 180.
You've also done so much beyond Codesmith, hopefully empowered by Codesmith, but also beyond Codesmith. So yeah.
Back in high school, I was pretty business oriented and wanted to get into startups and I was, maybe doing some nonprofit work and some charity things and that kind of thing. And I think I've always had this drive to, it sounds corny, but kind of make a great impact in the world, improve the prosperity of humanity. I started my startup in high school, started as kind of a side gig. It got more serious in college and I took out a gap year to work on it. And at that time, it was a machine learning platform that optimized company meetings with calendar data and with employee feedback. And at that time, I was completely non-technical, but I think I was so driven by the sense of building a company, seeing people benefit from it, and the potential of building something great. I was really motivated by that. So around COVID, we unfortunately had to shut down for a variety of reasons. And from there, I had some time to retrospect. And I was thinking, looking back on my experience as a non-technical co-founder, and I was thinking, okay, there's certain things that forced us to, either not gain as much traction as we would have liked, or kind of things that caused us to shut down. And I pointed a lot of things toward my non-technical acumen.
How did you find a partner who was able to build it, or how did you get it through?
Initially in high school, I was scrappy. I was pulling together some money, hiring freelancers. Eventually, I was able to pitch some co-founders to join me. And, that part is hard as well, especially if you're non-technical, to pitch a technical co-founder to quit their job or whatever to join you for sweat equity. So yeah, there was that portion of it. From that point, we had to shut down the startup, and I retrospected and I kind of share that same experience where I just wish this technical background is probably the next step if I want to really achieve my potential as a startup founder. So from there, I probably self-studied a little bit and didn't get very far with that. I was probably less mature of kind of a student back then. And from that point, after a couple months of self-studying, I'm like, okay, I'm going to join a bootcamp. And Codesmith came up quickly. And long story short, I'd say I got a lot out of it. So after graduating Codesmith, I switched majors and was able to transfer schools into UVA, the University of Virginia, and got my first part-time job during school. And that helped me actually pay back the money from Codesmith. And then got an Amazon internship that year. Yeah. And from there, that's kind of where I went.
In a funny way, the whole point of Codesmith is to be able to self-study on anything afterwards. So people have said to me, hey, you should create a program about XYZ. Yes, except the whole point of the program is for you to become autonomous enough to be able to learn anything. How much was that a factor? How did you think about that, you becoming a better self-studier that took you from being software engineer to machine learning engineer?
That's a great question. Codesmith does a great job with that part. And you guys emphasize it throughout the program with hard learning, your ability to force yourself to do things that other people wouldn't, or things that is the best approach to, but most people, just couldn't bring themselves to. Your ability to do that and struggle through the material is what's going to set you up for success and being able to...
That's basically it. That's basically the entire premise of the program. Yep, that's right.
Yeah, and I think that autonomous problem solving is probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, most important skills. Software engineer, ML engineer. I learned that skill very well through Codesmith, and being able to employ that same skill to lead coding as well as ML system design is very important. In addition, I think Codesmith does a great job with the mental models from what I learned at Codesmith. Most of my CS curriculum that I took afterwards, probably 80% of most classes I already knew from Codesmith.
Wow.
And so whether that was a database course or even a web development course, obviously, but data structures, algorithms, stuff like that.
Put it on the website. Put this quote on the website.
Oh, you like that? Yeah, that's.
but because I am now feeling awkward because you're very kind. How can someone transitioning from software engineering to machine learning prove their capabilities to employers without direct ML experience, with certifications, a portfolio, or another strategy? What a great question. Give me a sense, Victor, of how you could think about that transition. Maybe we can spend a bit of time on this.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's very applicable right now. And I think I'll address it from 2 points of perspective. One, I can maybe talk about high level how I would approach it, and then also what I did in my time off. So after I graduated from my bachelor's, and this was 2022, I was delayed for about 6 months with my return offer from Amazon. Between July to February, I was self-studying, and that's a very lucky situation to be in. I know a lot of people can't self-study for 6 months full time. I'd say self-study alongside your current job, work on interesting projects, take a hard learning approach where you're working on projects that you're not exactly prepared for, but you struggle through it and you'll learn it.
We need to brand that the Codesmith way.
the
Someone
hard
said
learning
that to
or the
me.
Codesmith way. I think with any kind of self-studying approach, you'll probably make mistakes along the way. And as long as you take a kind of introspective approach where you constantly improve on your studying skills, I think you'll eventually find something that works for you. Initially, I went through Andrew Ng's courses. I went through many of them. So he has a ML specialization on Coursera and a deep learning specialization, as well as a math for ML specialization. So I went through all of those, and alongside that, I tried to stay very hands-on. I think with these courses, you often fall into this kind of false hope of actual understanding because, I think people are tempted to just really blaze through the videos.
It feels so good watching content. You're never wrong. I think one of the biggest secrets of Codesmith is having to explain it to other people. That's the pair programming. That's having to do the teaching sessions. Did you do any of that?
So I guess I incorporated review every day where I would try to explain it, or I would create study questions for myself and answer them a week later. I would actively build products that was a little out of my range and kind of figure out stuff myself. Or I would test my understanding if there's like a code along. As he's about to explain what he's doing before he codes it, I'll code it myself, and then I'll check my...
As you say, it's essentially the Codesmith program. And I often say to people, we don't have any secrets per se in Codesmith. It's that, what you're really paying for is somebody caring enough to not stop you doing that. So I guess I'd say to you, how did you find that intrinsic motivation?
I already went through the ML job search cycle in my last year of college. I was doing a couple ML research with the college, and I was, getting really into it and wanted to find a job and was unsuccessful. And from then I got this kind of golden opportunity with just self-studying, and I was determined to find a job.
Amazing.
At the end of it. Having that experience of going through Codesmith and learning everything so quickly, honestly, the quickest I've ever learned anything, right? I'm sure for most people, one day of learning at Codesmith is probably what some people could do for a week, 2 weeks if they're just mindlessly watching videos. So knowing that that's possible, I wanted to emulate that as much as possible. So, I took an approach where I would be very strict on improving my study skills on a weekly basis, as well as trying to implement the best study methods that I could. In addition, I tracked everything pretty granularly. So made sure that the progress I was making on a day-to-day was good, and, tracked every focus session. So on a per hour basis, tracked what I did to make sure I was on track. You can watch a code along for a week and think, oh, I've mastered web development. And then you go and make a dummy project and you're unable to start,
Absolutely. So let's talk a bit about portfolio. I often talk with Codesmith that portfolio, so people think a portfolio of website pictures almost is a measure of you as a web development software engineer. And the answer is no.
That's a great question. And it goes into the latter half of my self-study plan, right? Initially mimicking the Codesmith way. Initially, I was foundation building. So it was, lectures with labs pretty much and very hands-on learning. After that, I did several projects that were small, just like Codesmith, kind of 2 weeks of working on 2 or 3 projects. And these were just building these maybe very dummy, very easy models, like an MNIST model or a simple RNN to maybe something like RNN for sentiment classification. So these are the simplest ML models that you can make, but just making sure I was building them from scratch. I think building it from scratch was key. And it's probably this like same with Codesmith. You just want to make sure you can, you're putting your theoretical skills to the test and also building those engineering skills along the way. Finally, I decided I would, do a very long project. Mine went for 2 months roughly. I was able to join a group that was already working on some things, and I built a multi-agent large language model framework. So a framework that can tie together LLMs in kind of a way where they can interact with each other and dynamically tailor behavior according to like inputs and outputs, for example. So a simple use case would be mimicking what a dev shop would have. Like you would have a CTO that kind of is prompted to be such, and then you would have QA and software engineers, and maybe the software engineers are executed within a cycle. Through building that, I put, you utilize like graph theory to make sure that you're going through the multi-agent flow as well as some ML to, I guess for any agents that you want to fine tune, for example.
Amazing. I would love to ask, future of hiring, while the large companies continue to lead perhaps in established ML engineering team hiring, smaller companies steadily catching up. We're seeing more and more. And then I guess I'd also be curious how some of the roles that we're seeing more and more grads get, which is AI software engineer, how are they fitting into the broader team structure you're describing earlier? But yeah, what are your trend perspectives you're seeing? Small companies versus big companies. Obviously, you've been at TikTok and Amazon, but you also had your own startup, so you can maybe make some comparisons as well. But how are you seeing things over the years ahead?
Great question. So to answer your first question, AI engineers, they'd probably be software engineers working on an AI team So, they'd be implementing UI and full stack features that serve AI models to the users. But, as far as the deployment, the pipelining, that's probably done with the ML platform engineer. So that's probably separate from an AI engineer. But obviously, I think right now things are unclear. I think they're gonna start settling out as the industry matures, similar to how software engineers probably started getting more of a clear-cut role.
One of the things we've seen is a lot of grads taking, in smaller companies, AI engineer, and they are actually doing, a bit of that pipeline development. They are doing some of the ML ops adjacent pieces that in a TikTok, not a chance. There's specialists in each lane, but you can imagine in a bit like in the early days of software engineering, have to be a generalist more in a startup, especially before things are more delineated.
I'd say so. I'd say it's hard to characterize these roles. MLEs also sit on this spectrum and can be anywhere, right? I'd say there's going to be a lot more models, a lot more cheap ML solutions available, just because that's where the industry is growing, right? We're offering more LLMs for enterprise, or let's say if you want easy ML development, there's probably going to be a lot more of those solutions, which means that I think a lot of these roles are going to turn into implementing ML solutions as opposed to creating these nitty-gritty models. So I think there's going to be a separation around this kind of model training part versus the actual serving and using of the models. I think the researchers and people with postgrad degrees, and research scientists or research engineers, they're probably going to be more concentrated to this kind of lane where it's just like model development, model design, kind of academic understanding, this kind of stuff. And then on the flip side, I think a lot of MLEs are going to be still working with the research scientists, but working on implementing these ML models in their products, implementing it in a way where it's resource efficient, maybe working on these kind of products, working on pipelining, on deployment. And that's the sense I'm getting because, even for a company like us, there's a lot of PhDs that probably want to get in, but maybe would have to resort to other roles. I think there's going to be surplus of PhDs and ML. And that's why I think the research roles are going to go towards that.
They need to go to Codesmith to fill in the engineering piece.
That's right. They can do whatever they want.
Exactly.
But yeah, that's kind of the view I'm seeing. But I think there's going to be tons of ML jobs. I think I got into this space initially because of how exciting it is. I think every day you work on things that are so cutting edge. It probably is amongst, the best technology that humanity's ever created in this specific domain. And the methods we implement, if they're older than like maybe 5 years, it's probably considered outdated. A lot of the stuff we work with is discovered within the past year. All of these reasons, and in addition to kind of the technical acumen that you can develop from kind of a first principles understanding, I think is very cool. So a lot of these reasons is why I decided to get into this space, and I'm still very optimistic about this. I mean, I think it's not far-fetched to say that I think this space is only going to grow, and there's going to be tons of jobs kind of available for MLEs. I think I want to position myself as a startup founder to not to be, the best at anything, the best at, research, the best at whatever, but to just well equip myself to have skills that make me very individual.
The intersection, it's the intersection of those different things is why I don't know if you ever saw that thing on Hacker News years ago, some blog post, which is like, it's very, very hard to be the greatest, engineer within the narrow definition of pure exceptional communicator, maybe with, great experience in medicine. Now you can be in the top category, able to make the greatest impact, have the greatest insight without being one of 50 million. And that's a wonderful place to end. Thank you so much, Victor. Thank you so much to our online audience, everybody who's joined. Yeah, Victor will be in Y Combinator at some point, and or South Park Commons, and or any other wonderful place to take your idea to and your talent. I personally have enormous value out of this conversation. So thank you so much, Victor. To everybody on the stream, like and subscribe.